I want to talk about the threats to Bitcoin, we were doing a SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weaknesses, and so forth. So the threats that are out there, people have written off Bitcoin thousands of times, but it's still around. What if the government decides, okay, Bitcoin's too much of a threat to us and our CBDCs and the IMF and Christine Lagarde and all these folks come together? What if they come out with some strict regulations? I know that that's going to be impossible with Bitcoin being a global monetary network, but I'm curious what your thoughts are there.
I think that over the next decade, the most logical challenge for people in the Bitcoin community is just regulatory FUD. You'll just see fear, uncertainty, and doubt about, well, what if a regulator does something that's bad? I don't know what it is, but what if they do it? Just like, what if Dr. Evil invents a quantum computer? They're just I'm speculating that something might happen. I don't know what it is, but what if something that I don't know will be really bad that will cause a problem? And that's why we should do nothing, or that's why you should give me money to invest in the 6,437th different project. And I think the answer is, the regulators will regulate it. The IRS will make you pay tax on it. They have. It's property. You pay property tax. If you want to use it as currency, you can't, because there's a capital gain tax when you transfer it. So it is regulated. The OCC will have an opinion. The SEC will have an opinion. The Treasury will have an opinion. There are KYC regulations. Like, for example, it might take you 4 weeks to get an account with a regulated exchange. There'll be AML regulations. I think there'll be regulations everywhere in the world, but the writing is on the wall. It's most likely that what we're going to see is it can be regulated as property, and that means that if you had $100,000 of cash in the bank and you wanted to wire it to a random phone number without saying or knowing who it is, probably the bank would balk. And if you have 100,000 worth of Bitcoin and you want to wire it to a random place and it's in a regulated custodian, they'll probably get around to saying the same rules that apply to AML rules that apply to cash or to gold or to a share of Apple stock will probably start to apply to Bitcoin. There'll be some evolution of that. Maybe they'll be more flexible, maybe they won't. But at the end of the day, if your greatest fear is it gets regulated the same way other property is regulated, it's not going to impair Bitcoin as a store of value. And in fact, Bitcoin is the best store of value on earth. It's a better store of value than stocks. You can't wire $10 million of stocks to a private wallet in Africa right now, but that doesn't mean that Amazon is worthless, right? It's going to be a better store of value than real estate. It's going to be a better store of value than bonds. You can't send $1 billion worth of sovereign debt to a private wallet, but that doesn't mean that the debt isn't there, right? So if Bitcoin is better store of value than bonds, stocks, real estate, gold, silver, and derivatives, and every flavor of cash, then there's no reason why it shouldn't absorb $100 trillion of monetary energy, regardless of what if you apply all the regulations to it that you applied to all those things I just named.
Right.
For example, if you had a $10 million ranch in California, you probably couldn't wire that to your friend in Africa to a private wallet without permission either, right?
Right.
The point, but does that make it worthless?
No.
Yeah, so I think that the regulatory FUD, again, is another example of it can be a debilitating, paralytic type reaction where people paralyze themselves. They prevent themselves from doing something obvious and rational because they're speculating about some parade of horribles that may or may not take place that are incoherent. They can't quite articulate yet, but they're sure they're afraid of something that they haven't quite been able to articulate. But let's just say, in the extreme case, if Bitcoin is regulated the same way that $10,000 of cash is in the US, it's still going to be 1,000 times better than holding the cash.
Right.
What are you going to do, right? You're going to convert your Bitcoin back into cash, right? You can sell your Bitcoin right now. What are you going to convert it into that's less regulated?
Yep.
Nothing, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I think there'll be know your customer this, there'll be anti-money laundering that, there'll be some tax regulations, there'll be some back and forth over what you can do, there'll be concerns about privacy. That's why I look at Bitcoin and I think it's pretty clear. If the use case is store of value, well, like 7.8 billion people on Earth need a store of value, and then probably the value of that is 100 to 300 trillion dollars, right? That's enough. That's good. If the use case is currency, replace the dollar and the euro, that seems like that's just intentionally inflammatory. We don't need to replace the euro and the dollar. The bankers are going to be upset about replacing the euro and the dollar. I don't think it's going to happen, not in the next decade or 2 decades, so we don't need to get wrapped around the axle on that. And if the use case is medium of exchange and payment, like we don't really need to pay for a pizza with it. We don't need to pay for a Starbucks coffee with it. I mean, that's already solved by Alibaba and PayPal and Square and Apple Pay and Amazon and Google Pay. And it's, they can be regulated, and Visa and MasterCard. So you can leave Visa and MasterCard alone. You can leave the dollar and the euro alone. We can agree to pay taxes.
Yeah.
We can, we can not thumb our nose at regulators. And then we can focus upon the critical matter at hand, which is everybody on Earth needs a store of value. It's not illegal to pursue a store of value. If you have $100,000 in cash and you're looking at it being debased at 15% a year because of the expansion of the M2 money supply and fractional banking, then your choice is, are you going to buy bonds? Are you going to buy real estate? Are you going to buy Apple stock? Are you going to buy the NASDAQ index? Are you going to buy the Dow? Are you going to buy any index, the Russell 2000? Are you going to go buy gold? You're going to go buy silver? Or are you going to go buy Bitcoin? That's your choice. Make a choice.
Sure.
If Bitcoin is an index, it becomes a thermodynamically sound monetary index, and you compared that to the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ, it would be a better index.
Yeah.
It's a deflationary index, right?
Yep.
It doesn't necessarily replace currency with privacy, with censorship resistance. Don't get me wrong, right? Before I trigger everybody, I'm in favor of all those things. But you don't have to achieve all those things in order to have a valuable, a store of value crypto asset network. If Bitcoin is simply a store of value and is better than gold,
right,
there's no reason why it shouldn't go to $100 trillion in value.